Hi, everyone, and welcome to the 7th Annual UAGC Early Childhood Conference. We are super excited that you joined us today. Our next presenter is Dr. Jayme Hines, and she is an assistant professor of education at Wilkes University and an associate faculty member at UAGC. At Wilkes University, she teaches coursework across early childhood and elementary programs and coordinates the Alternative Pathway program. Dr. Hines also serves as the commissioner for the NAEYC Commission of the Accreditation of Early Childhood Higher Education Programs. Her research interests include the social-emotional development of preschoolers, teacher preparation, and faculty-student relationships. Dr. Hines, thank you so much for being here today. Next slide, please. This is just a disclaimer that says an online degree from the University of Arizona Global Campus does not lead to immediate teacher licensure in any state, and I will give you a moment just to glance over this. Next slide, please. This disclaimer says that the University of Arizona Global Campus does not warrant any of the links, websites, or other things that are stated in this presentation. Dr. Hines, thank you again, and the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Well, I'm so glad that you've decided to join us today to talk a little bit about taking care of the caregiver. We spend a lot of time talking about self-care, and we spend a lot of time talking about burnout. And I think it's important to talk that it's a lot more than just bubble baths, long walks, and meditation. There's more involved. So before we begin, I think it's important to sort of set the stage and become present for our presentation. So if you take a moment and adjust your body, sit in a way that you're comfortable, or stand. Some people prefer to ground themselves standing. Breathe deeply, and think about that. When I say breathe deeply, we often breathe and our whole body moves, our shoulders go up and down. Think about filling down to the bottom of your lungs. And in that case, what you're doing is you're pushing your belly out instead of your shoulders up. So we're going to listen for just 1 minute. You will follow along and enjoy the bells. This is just a simple video I found online. I use this with both adult learners and with children.
A 1-minute mindfulness bell timer, beginning and ending with 3 chimes, with low-pitched Tibetan singing bowl every 30 seconds.
Just a little bit about me. I've already been introduced by Dr. Shipley, but I wanted to take a moment and just say that I've been an educator for over 20 years. I've taught preschool through 6th grade and higher education. I've been sort of all over the world, well, wish it was the world, all over the country as a military spouse for over 20 years. We moved around about every 2.5 to 3 years. We're finally retired, so we're situated in Pennsylvania. We're just outside of Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania. In addition to all the things I do about teaching, I also am an accreditor. I'm a commissioner for the accreditation of higher education programs focusing on early childhood education with NAEYC. So I like to really jump into the work that I do and get involved sort of in all kinds of ways. So I want to think a little bit just about what you're going to get out of today. I want you to realize a little bit more about the current issues facing education, especially early childhood educators. And some of this might be familiar to you and some might be a brand new eye-opener. The reason we're setting the stage like that is because I also am going to talk a little bit about advocacy and what you can do as an early childhood educator to advocate for the betterment of our field. We're also going to practice some mindfulness activities throughout. I'm going to share things with you today that you can use as an adult, but also things that you can use with children. I think it's really important to model our behaviors with young children because they see everything we do, the positive and the negative. So if you can tell young children, you know, I'm feeling a little overwhelmed and here's a strategy I use. You model this enough with young children, they're going to start doing it back, which is exactly what we want to see children to do as they learn to self-regulate. So we're going to talk a little bit about why this, why now. We're going to talk a little bit about the history of teacher retention, talk about mindfulness, of course, emotional resiliency, advocacy as a form of self-care, and then with what time allows, I'm going to share a little bit about creating a self-care plan. So why this, why now? Well, these headlines will tell you. I started collecting headlines that sort of jarred me probably in the middle of the pandemic because I could really see what was happening in this field. And the image from NPR on February 2nd, I believe this was the 2021, was the one that probably struck me the hardest. As a military spouse, I fully understand the goals of our military, and I fully understand the goals and outcomes of our military members that are part of the National Guard. So when I saw this, and if you read the mission of the National Guard, it's about responding to emergencies. So this image for me was just a big shock to my system to say, listen, we are saying teacher crisis, the shortage we're having in teacher education right now is a crisis. It's an emergency in which that states were sending the National Guard in to help. If that doesn't tell us we need to do something differently immediately to serve our teachers, to help them prepare for the field, stay in the field, and engage in the field, nothing else did. Unfortunately, we haven't seen the movement we needed to see since then. So it's important for me to think about what are we seeing? During the pandemic, I'm sure you couldn't drive by an early care center without seeing the giant sign outside that said, not all heroes wear capes. But then real quickly, the narrative changed when schools were reopening and you would hear teachers being called lazy or saying, go back to work, or just quit if you don't want to go back. When the teachers were expressing real and deep fear about the safety and the safety measures that were or were not happening in their school setting. Early care educators, many of them did not stop working. They were working in childcare because the world does not run if we do not have early care and education. So we were seeing these folks as frontline workers, but not reaping the same benefits as so many other frontline workers were. We know right now, if you were to go on to Indeed in your local area and search childcare teachers, childcare, paraprofessional, daycare, you're going to find thousands of openings. I can't think of a single childcare center or director I've spoken to in the last couple of years that doesn't have at least 1 to 10 openings. I was talking to a student of mine just a little while ago, a director, and she was saying that she's trying to hire for 10 positions to make her comfortable in her space. She had 40 applications. I was like, that's wonderful. She said, no, you don't understand. I get 40 applications, and of that, I have 1 I can offer a position to. People who are applying for all the wrong reasons, and they don't really understand the work that we're doing. So sure, we're having applicants. She's like, and I'm not being overly choosy. I'm just trying to say, why do you want to work with children? And the response from several people were, well, I don't want to work on the weekends. And that's a little scary. That's not exactly the mentality we want when we're talking about working with young children. So just in Pennsylvania, where I'm at now, I wanted to share a little bit of information, hopefully to inspire you to look into your own state's statistics as well. So what happened in our most recent teacher certification, for example, was we are seeing more emergency permits going out to folks who are not necessarily trained as educators, rather than new applicants from folks who've completed a teacher prep program. Why this is an issue. This is a big issue because we are seeing unqualified folks in the classroom. And when you think about this and you think about all that you've learned and all of the experiences that you've had, if you were to just decide one day, you know what, I'm going to go be an accountant, just going to go be hired as an accountant. I'm going to have emergency permission to be an accountant. Suddenly you're going to be sat in front of scenarios, examples, software, tools that you do not know how to use. but someone said, it's okay for you to have this job. And that's scary as it is, because we're talking about people's money, but what we're talking about are people's children. And we want to have the most high quality folks in those spaces. But because we can't fill those teacher prep programs, because we don't have enough people seeking out early care and education career pathways, we're seeing this desperate shortage. So we know it's bad, but we don't know how much worse it's going to get. Neither states nor the federal government have a real number. Last time there was any sort of holdable data really that we could work with was the 2000 reports from 2019 and 2017. So we know this world has shifted and changed since then. So we don't have the true numbers, but what we know is that we're in trouble as a country. So just a few more things just to highlight. So we know that each year more than 200,000 folks are leaving the field, and that's for a whole host of reasons. That could be for retirement, maternity, paternity leave. That could be for a whole host of reasons, but that's a big number. We know that 50% of teachers leave within the first 5 years. So when I sit with brand new students who are new to the field and excited to become teachers, I share the statistic with them very early. And I say, I don't say these things to scare you. I say these for you to understand the reality of what is going on. We will prepare you the best we can, but you have so much work to do. And we're going to talk a little bit about that today, about the things we do as teachers to make sure we can stay. But it's real hard as you're sitting there thinking about, I'm going to spend 4 years at least to become a teacher. Then I might spend 2 or 3 more to get my master's so that I'm even more qualified. And then I might not last in that field for 5 years. That's just heartbreaking to me, and really to any of us in this field. We know that 9.5% of teachers leave before their first year. And again, whole host of reasons. But that's shocking to me as well. This teacher turnover is not only costly to the children who are missing out on seasoned, prepared teachers, but it's also very costly to the districts. When a district onboards a new teacher, it's costly from everything from setting up insurance and all your benefits to all of the people that help you get situated. It's costing school districts around this country $2.2 billion a year. And that is staggering. So understand that when teachers are hired, we're hiring teachers for the long run. We want you here as long as you want to be here. And we don't ever want to look at a job as a stepping stone for anybody. So that's why I tell our students as they're getting ready to launch into the field and look for those first-time teaching jobs, I say, go to the place where you feel most comfortable. You are interviewing them as much as they are interviewing you, because you never want to treat some place as a stop along the way. And then we also are seeing something that is happening with men in our field, especially early ed, is that they're quickly pulled from teaching positions to take administrative jobs. And one of the reasons they cite to leaving the field is because men often articulate this pull of being possibly the only man in the school, and they have feelings of having this father figure, man figure in a lot of people's lives, that they feel like they can't be a good father or husband to their own kids because they are giving so much of their emotional energy in the schools. And as women, we feel this as well. This is just something that men have articulated. We do know that it's even more dire for Black men in the field right now, because we know that they make up less than 2% of our workforce, which is troubling, because we obviously know that Black boys are higher percentages than 2% in our field. So we always want to have people that look like us and understand us as our teachers. And we're not seeing that. We're not recruiting enough Black men. But what we're finding is that often schools mistreat Black male teachers because they see them as an opportunity to be the authority figure. So often these teachers are shifted to work in in-school suspension rooms, or are often seen as the disciplinarian, which is absolutely not the role that they probably got into teaching for, but that's the role that they're often handed. So they decide this is not for me. And that's a shame, because we certainly want to keep all of our high quality teachers in our spaces. The pandemic made this even more challenging for us, because what we're seeing now is if you survey teachers, one survey showed that 54% of teachers were saying they were very likely or somewhat likely to leave the field within the next 2 years. 54% of teachers. That is staggering, because pre-pandemic, we're looking at about 39 saying, yeah, I might leave in the next 2 years, which is still a high number for sure. But it is a little intimidating to see that we could have this true crisis on our hands. So why is it happening? Well, one of the biggest reasons is due to burnout. So I want you to take a minute and just think about how you would define teacher burnout, perhaps how you felt, how you've spoken to your friends and colleagues. How would you define burnout? By definition, burnout is the physical and emotional fatigue. And as a teacher, you're like, yep, I got that. Physically exhausted at the end of the day, have a lot to still give my family and my friends. And yet I'm so tired because the job is so physically exhausting. But then there's that emotional fatigue as well. I remember when I was teaching 4 and 5-year-olds that I would come home touched out. So this is where you don't want to be touched by anybody because you have been touched all day long. And it happens a lot of times with young mothers. I remember when I was nursing my children, I would get to the end of the day where I wouldn't even want a hug from my husband because I would feel touched out. And I would find that same feeling when I was teaching 4 and 5-year-olds because they had such a desire to be connected and close. My situation was a little different. I was teaching on a military base this year, particular that comes to mind, the year after September 11th. And that year, one or both of every parent that my students had were deployed. My husband was also deployed. So we were sort of living in this crisis world. And I remember my children felt this real need to be near me, sit next to me, hold my hand. And when you have 20 children, it's hard to be that person for everyone, but they all wanted to be close. And I understood that. I knew that was a need they had in the moment. I was coming home to my own 4-year-old at the time and a husband who was gone. So I remember having to really shift myself. This could have been a breaking moment for me. I could have felt that full weight of the emotional and physical fatigue, this burnout, if I hadn't found a way with friends and family to work through it. So what we're seeing is we're seeing far more to do with a lot less time. The answer is just like, well, we're all pitching in. Everyone needs to do a little bit more. And you're being told that you need to do more, but with less supplies, less money, less time. We're starting to see more and more challenging behaviors in the classroom without administrative support, whether the administrators are not prepared to do that support, or they don't have the skills and resources, or they don't have the support they need to support you working with challenging behaviors. We're seeing more interesting challenging behaviors post-pandemic because we never really did that trauma transition that needed to happen. We're seeing more demands from the family. And some of this is coming politically, where families are being empowered to make more decisions for teachers, even though we know our teachers have been truly educated and prepared to teach in the field. So this is a lot of stress. If I was running my small business and I had a customer come in and say, I really don't like how this business is set up, so I really think we should move things around. The business owner, I'd be like, are you kidding me? I did all this work. This is my business. I'm going to keep it the way it is. As a teacher, we're being told, no, you have to explain to parents why you're doing every little thing, even though they may or may not be trained in the field of education, and you have to be responsive to making changes. And depending on where you live, that pressure could be higher or lower, depending on the political climate that you're living in. We're seeing a big demand and disrespect from the public. If you open a magazine or often newspapers, you're seeing a lot of, again, demands on the teacher without a lot of understanding of what teachers go through. It started back when we reopened, and I had mentioned earlier that we're seeing these teachers feeling this pressure of like, just go do your job or quit. Well, unfortunately, the answer has been a lot of our teachers are quitting. We're seeing low wages, and teachers who graduate with a bachelor's degree traditionally make 20% less than their similarly educated peers. So what that says to us is that I'm making the choice, obviously, to go into this field, not for the money. And that's okay. It's a choice. We know I could have done 1,000 other things. And I knew that this wasn't going to be a high paying field. And that's okay, because I knew what I had to give young children. But it gives me also the understanding that a lot of young teachers require a second job. So if I'm leaving my job that's emotionally and physically fatiguing, and then I have to go and do something else in retail or in restaurants, I have nothing left to give. And eventually you start looking and saying, oh man, I could make a lot more money just waitressing if I just did that full time. We're losing high quality folks because of the low wages. And we're also seeing little to no mentorship. Mentorship is critical for any teacher at any stage of your career. I've moved around quite a bit, and every time I've moved, I've received a mentor, even when I've had years of service under my belt, because I was in a new place with new families, with new demographics, in a new school. Mentorship is critical to help you feel centered. I have a great book to recommend to you. So Emily and Amelia NAEYC, I think I said that correct, wrote a book. They're sisters, and they have two very different professions, and they wrote a book together to talk about the secret of unlocking the stress cycle. And this is not a book intended specifically for teachers. This is really for anybody in our lives that are holding on to a lot of stress, because what they say and what they've uncovered in their research is that we don't complete a stress cycle. And if you don't complete it, you're holding the stress in your body. So because of this, we're seeing a lot of teachers, again, they do a good job to make connections, with exhaustion, starting to feel cynicism, and overall being ineffective. I can't recommend the book enough. In fact, when I read it the first time, I listened to it on an audiobook because the sisters narrate it, and it was really wonderful to hear their words from their voices. I think it's a really great resource for you if you're thinking about how you can help yourself. Another great resource for you is to focus on finding out what are those signs of burnout, because you may not know that that's what you're going through. It's very similar to postpartum depression, I believe, in this sense, that sometimes new mothers don't know what they're going through. New mothers say that they're tired, or they're sad, or their emotions are all over the place, and they make a lot of excuses. Well, I just had a baby, my hormones are out of whack, and I'm overwhelmed, so of course I'm going to feel this way. And yet we see these mothers go to their doctors and explain what they're feeling sometimes, and the doctor's like, oh, this is what you're going through. And the mother had no idea what they were going through and the kind of help that they could get. So I encourage you as teachers to look at this and say, man, am I experiencing burnout due to teaching, fatigue, self-doubt, withdrawal, stop being involved in the schools and doing the things that you like to do before, or loss of inspiration? Teaching is one of the most artistic and exciting fields that we can be in. We are constantly performing. We need that inspiration to make ourselves engaging with our young children. So if you're finding that these are the symptoms you're having, what can you do? Well, there's a great website called The Resilient Educator that has loads of resources that you can use for free, use with your colleagues when you're discussing this, because this isn't something you're going to be experiencing alone. There's a pretty good chance if you're feeling some of these things, you have friends and colleagues who are feeling the same way. So having someone to bounce ideas off of is really helpful. So you should check out the Resilience Educator website as well. So we know that teachers leave the field for a whole host of reasons. Inadequate preparation is one of them. We hear teachers most likely when they are done with teaching, their first year of teaching, they say, I was not prepared for families, working with families, and I was not prepared for classroom management. Well, anyone who teaches in higher ed says, we teach about classroom management, we teach about family engagement, and we do. We spend lots of time doing this, but it's the practice often students are missing out on. So when you get into the field and you're all on your own, it's very different than what you read in the books. Some even goes further to inadequate preparation, lack of field time, lack of practical experience, those sorts of things. So as an educator pursuing a degree, your job is to take everything you can from that degree. Lean on those professors that you have, ask those questions, seek out mentorship. We also know that sometimes teachers are leaving because there's lack of support for new teachers. That's, again, leads to mentorship. Sometimes you will be assigned a mentor, but sometimes you have to find them yourselves. I remember I was in one school and I was a young teacher and I was feeling a little overwhelmed. And I had this teacher who was only a couple years older than me. And she seemed to have it all together. And I was like, I need to learn from this person. So I went to my principal and I said, I would really like to watch so-and-so teach. I could really benefit from seeing her in action over a couple days. And they helped me find someone to cover my class so I could do that. And I was able to learn a lot from her. And then we built a relationship over time where I could go to her with questions. And it wasn't to duplicate what she was doing because we're all individuals as teachers. But what it did for me was it gave me ideas to see outside of this box. My teacher prep program helped me think in certain ways, but it did put my knowledge base sort of in a box. And it was helpful to see someone who didn't go to school where I went and how they have grown as a teacher over the years and pick up some tips that would be helpful for me. Sometimes they leave because of challenging work conditions. That could be anything from discipline, behaviors, family engagement or not, building, even some buildings are sort of falling apart. There's a whole host of reasons. it's important that when, like I said earlier, when you're interviewing, you are interviewing the place as much as they are interviewing you. So understanding, can I work here? Is this going to be something that I can make better? Can I support what's happening here? That will help you feel a lot more job satisfaction. Some is just dissatisfaction with compensation, but that is not the number one reason, believe it or not. It normally is more based off of inadequate preparation and lack of mentorship. Some teachers do leave for better career opportunities. If you are in the world of TikTok and Instagram and all of the things, you probably follow teachers, and you probably know many teachers who've left the field because after getting their platform built up, they're making more money from Instagram or teacher pay teacher than they ever were in the classroom. That isn't a career goal for most people. Most people want to teach, they want to do the thing they were trained to do. But sometimes other career opportunities do arise. And then of course, personal reasons. And I've mentioned some of those already. So take a moment and think to yourself, what do you think teachers really want? What do they want out of teaching? So when you're thinking about retention and burnout, what do they want? Now I want you to switch your thinking, but what do teachers really need? The reason I formed this question in two ways is because there are things that we want. I want a shorter work week. Love to only work for 4 days a week. That'd be awesome. I would want every one of my students to have everything they need to be prepared to learn. See, some of my wants are super unrealistic. But when I shift it to what do I need? What do I need to do my job better? Well, I need adequate supplies. I need an understanding administrator. I need families who are willing to engage with me in partnership for their child. That's what I need. And then from there, as educators, we can say, okay, how do we create that environment? How do we work within what we know to get what the teachers need to help them to be successful? As I was doing research for this presentation, I came across the concept of quiet quitting. Have you heard of it before? So by definition, quiet quitting is an informal term that talks about practice of reducing the amount of effort a person's putting into their job every day. So stopping to complete any kind of task that's not explicitly in their job description. This is done secretly or without notifying somebody's boss. So what can we do about it? I think there are teachers all over this country quiet quitting, which essentially means that they're not stepping up to volunteer for things that teachers used to do before, to run that club, to come after school for an event, to all the things that make this profession so interesting. Some folks are just learning to set boundaries. I was a terrible boundary setter as a new teacher. I took on everything and I was leading myself to a really dark place because I just couldn't do it all well. I could do it all okay, but I don't want to be an okay teacher. I want to be a great teacher, and you can't do it when you're trying to do everything. So what I did was set up boundaries. Setting up boundaries is not the same as quiet quitting. Quiet quitting is saying, well, if it's not written in my job description, I'm not doing it. Well, how many times have you looked at a teacher's job description and saw every little thing that you do? It's so nuanced, you can't possibly. So I can't really do that, but I can set boundaries. I can say, you know, I'm not going to check my work email after 5 o'clock. I want to give parents a chance to see what comes home on the bus with their child, give them a chance to understand a little bit about what's happening in our class, maybe respond to a question I had asked. But after 5 o'clock, I'm gonna allow myself just to be part of my family. I am still working on setting boundaries. In fact, over the holiday, the 4th of July holiday was weird. It's on Tuesday. I allowed myself not to engage in emails on the 4th of July. It was hard. It was super hard to do. But let me tell you, it made me feel good because I could be totally present with my family. We also need to acknowledge that sometimes we need help. It's okay to say you need help. It's okay to say I've taken on too much, or this is too much and I need some help. Seeking out people who can help you in a way, or at least guide you to make decisions that are going to better suit you, possibly around setting boundaries, possibly around saying no. And I think saying no is tough because many of us go in this field because we're helpers. We see a lot of nurses and teachers. We go in because we want to help. We want to be present. Of course we do. because of that, we say yes a lot, even though we don't have capacity for it. So I've learned when I'm asking people for favors, I say, do you have capacity for this? I ask it first before I ask if they can do it. Because when you ask somebody if they can dedicate the time and energy to something before you ask them to do it, you're going to get two very different answers. You'll often get, sure, I can do that. No, I really don't have time for it. Well, that just spreads people way too thin. And then you want to be part of building a positive work culture. So this means that you are being a part of your community. You are stepping up. You are seeing ways to help people feel that they are valued. Gratitude goes a really long way. And I know that sounds kind of simplistic, but if you take time to say thank you to somebody for doing something, or seeking somebody out and telling them, listen, what you did made a real difference for me. You've made a big impact on them, and you are actually setting a positive work culture. I want to share another resource for you. So I actually had a student many years ago give me this book. She had received it for a Christmas gift, and she brought a copy to me and she said, you're going to love this. So the book is called Onward, and it's Cultivating Emotional Resilience in Educators. So this is thinking about how we rebound when things get challenging. And what's neat about this book is it's broken up by month. So it follows the teacher calendar, and you have different goals and things you can work on each month. It would be a great book study for any school or childcare center to help their teachers learn how to become emotionally resilient. So the question that the author poses is, how do we weather the storm in our lives and rebound after something difficult? So recognizing that we have an ability to be resilient is connected to our circumstances. So recognize that resiliency isn't something everybody has. My circumstances can allow for resiliency or not. This is a great resource. Again, I hope you'll check it out. So what do? How can we be a contributing part of this? Well, we need to have some big conversations. We need to think about individual resiliency, systematic conditions, and organizational conditions. We also have to recognize that our well-being is a pretty even split pie. Our cognitive well-being, along with our social, our physical, and our emotional well-being, all help to set the stage for our success. Just because I might be taking care of my social well-being and my cognitive well-being, if I'm not focusing in on my physical as well, along with my emotional, I'm missing a part of what makes me whole. I want to share a couple mindfulness tools for you as a teacher. So mindfulness is described as paying attention in the present moment, on purpose and without judgment. It does not mean that you empty your brain of all things. And I think when I first started doing mindfulness practices, that's what I thought. I thought I had to sit and just not think of anything. And that's impossible. As a mother, as a wife, as a teacher, my brain is filled with so many things. I've got sticky notes everywhere. I've got thought bubbles everywhere. It's busy. So I had watched this one video one time that was so helpful. And the gentleman who was running the mindfulness example said, it's impossible to have a blank mind. We're too busy. Our brains are too busy. Your job is to be present with those things and try to quiet them while you're focusing and being mindful. We know that there is a significant benefit for teachers who practice mindfulness, which is one of the reasons I began this session like I did. And another reason why I use mindfulness in my classroom with my students, because I know if I'm teaching them these skills that they're going to have them as they move forward into their own classrooms. There's a great article linked here, and I'm actually going to share all of my research articles with you at the end, but it talks specifically about 7 ways that mindfulness can help teachers. So it helps us understand our own emotions. We tend to be pretty emotionally aware beings, but sometimes we mix ours with the emotions of others. So practicing mindfulness helps you focus on you, selfishly and rightfully, just on you. It helps you communicate more effectively with students, manage those students that we might find a little bit more challenging. It helps us set up a positive learning environment, strengthen our relationship with students, which really isn't that the whole point of what we do. Helps us slow down when we need to, and it helps us build community. I'm not going to play this video right now. Again, I did share this with you at the end, so you'll have access to it. But this is one of the activities that I do with my teacher candidates, but also with children. It's called belly breathing. So at the beginning of this, when I had our mindfulness moment, I said that when we breathe, we tend to do this up and down shoulder nonsense because we're breathing, we're doing a task. If we are doing mindful breathing, we are doing it so that we can fill the very bottom of our lungs. And until you hit the bottom part of your lungs, you're not really getting yourself into a mindful space. So with belly breathing, we tell students to sit with their hands on their belly, and they have to feel their lungs fill all the way to the bottom, and their hands should be moving out. This is a great opportunity for you to share that with children, because as you model this belly breathing when you're feeling overwhelmed, so will the children. So here are some strategies you can use today with children on your own. So one is 5 senses. You can take a moment and no one will notice what you're doing. You can literally sit there and you can look around and find one of each of your senses. Something I can smell, something I can see, something I can hear, something I can touch, and something I can taste. Now, that doesn't mean you're going to walk around tasting, smelling, and touching everything. It means that you're grounding yourself by seeking those things out for you. Another one is simply deep breathing, purposefully, not exaggeratedly, because, you know, when I was a kid, you'd hear your mom go, the huffy breath, you kind of knew what that meant. That's not the message we want to send to the children around us. We just want to be mindful about it. Hands on the belly, filling your lungs, taking a moment to let your heart rate settle when you're in a difficult situation, and then returning so you can be present with your students. Counting to 5. This is one that one of my students taught me when she was taking a public speaking class. She said she was really nervous. She didn't like public speaking. And I said, that's funny, because that's what we do as teachers. And she's like, I know, give me a bunch of kids, no problem. Give me a bunch of adults, no thank you. So what she did is she put her hand behind her back and she would run her thumb down each of her fingers. And she's literally just feeling herself being present. She can feel this, it's not distracting. She's not talking about what she's doing. She can hold another conversation while she mindlessly and mindfully goes through this process. It is easy enough to do where nobody sees what you're doing, and you can just have that conversation. Sometimes we do have to engage with difficult behaviors, and sometimes we don't know really what we want to do and how we want to engage with those behaviors. So what we need to do is we need to find ways to center ourselves in a way that we aren't reactionary. We are able to be present in the moment and work within what the child needs. And then taking 5 is literally that. You know, I'm really frustrated right now. I'm going to take 5. Now, many of us have quiet spaces set up in our classroom for young children. We want them to self-select out of a confusing or loud or overstimulating experience. We can self-select that too. Now, of course, we still have to be present. We have to watch out for our children's safety. We can't just leave the classroom for 5 minutes. Most of us don't have staffing for that. But we do have the ability to be present in a way that we are still taking ourselves out of the current situation. This is powerful when children are taught this by their teachers. You know, we're so far removed from the timeout mentality. We know that's not a best practice for young children. So telling a child, hey, go sit in the corner because you're annoying me, is certainly not how we teach. We may ask a child, you know, you need a few minutes to think about how loud your voice is in this space. Or you might say, I think you need to leave the block center for a few minutes and think about how you could be a better friend. Sure, all of those things are happening. But if we teach children there's a space in our class where when you're feeling overwhelmed, when you're frustrated, when you're angry, you can remove yourself from a situation. And when you feel your heart rate come down, you can come back to the group. So all of these things are really helpful to model. Here are some great resources for you to put in that section of your classroom that are inexpensive to make and really engaging for children. So the bottle on the left side of the screen, these are super easy to create. It's just water, clear glue, and some sort of glitter. The more clear glue you put in the bottle, the slower the glitter will fall. You also want to use warm water so it dilutes that glue a little bit. These are super easy to make. In fact, I encourage folks to make this with your children that you know who are most likely going to need it, because then when they go to their quiet center, they can take out their bottle, they can watch the glitter fall and return to class when they're feeling more settled. And again, that's a decision they're making. So it's giving the students a lot of control over a lot of things. The desk fidget tool is super easy to make. It's got those little fuzzy pipe cleaners and tape and beads. Easy to make, pretty quick, and you can tape it right to the desk. We've got the Zen garden that, again, is pretty simple to make, pretty inexpensive. I like the mindful breathing wand. You can also buy pinwheels, because the goal is to make the streamers or the pinwheel spin slowly. So it's not where you're blowing it to make it all, it's not a party favor. It's intended to release our breath slowly. So we want to see them moving, but we don't want to see them flying like it's a party favor. And then finally, Play-Doh, which I love to make Play-Doh with my students. I have a no-cook recipe linked here that you can use, and you add just a couple drops of essential oil to it. And when the student engages with it, they are able to release the smells from the essential oil. I like to use lavender. I think that's a really helpful one. And every child can have their own of all of these things. So when they need them, they can engage with them in your classroom space. I'm going to shift gears real briefly for a second about thinking about advocacy as self-care. So when I talked about self-care, I've talked about burnout. I talked about being resilient. I talked about different strategies you can use for mindfulness. But one of the things we can do is be present in the field and use our voice as a sense of self-care, because I can sit here and be like, man, this legislation that's going up is terrible. I can't believe I'm going to have to be affected by this. This school board is changing everything. My board of directors is saying XYZ, and I'm just frustrated. That frustration doesn't go anywhere. So instead, us using our voice is a part of self-care. I am doing everything I can to engage, to help make sure that I can make a difference in what we're doing. So I encourage students to get involved with their union if they have a union available for them, or to join professional groups like NAEYC and the Association of Teachers Educators. They have lots of opportunities for professionals. Become someone who can voice your thoughts politically. This is super intimidating. And I talk to students all the time, and I have to remind them, elected officials are elected officials. They may have great business knowledge. They may have great knowledge in healthcare. They may even have been a teacher in the past, but what they don't have is your knowledge. And our elected officials need to hear from you so they know how to make policy decisions that are going to impact you. Here in Pennsylvania, we realize the budget's coming out, and the budget is not giving what we thought it was going to give for early care and education. And we've made a huge push to reach out to our legislators to say, hey, you have to rethink this budget. You have taken out what was allocated for early care and education, and here are all the reasons that you've misstepped. We have several great organizations in Pennsylvania that even created a template for what we can do, how we can write our letters, how we can make a script to make our phone calls. NAEYC does the same thing. There's loads of people out there that will help give you the information so you can feel empowered and prepared to talk to your legislation, whether that's just an aide on the phone or an email. It's critical that we get involved. You need to know your First Amendment rights. You need to know what you can and cannot say. And when I say this, I don't say this to scare you, but we as teachers have the right to say what we say. I mean, we're covered by the same Constitution as everybody else. But if we say something that is harmful, we are not covered by the First Amendment. So you need to understand what your First Amendment rights are as you start speaking up. You want to organize. You want to collaborate with your administration. Set your boundaries, what you're comfortable to do. And of course, find the right fit for you. What do you think you feel comfortable sharing? You might be like, I don't want to call my legislators. So write a letter. When you write to the people that your area voted in, they want to hear from you. It won't do me any good in Wilkes-Barre to write to legislators out of Philadelphia. Maybe they'd like to hear it, but I don't vote for them. So they're not going to put my voice as big of a weight. I talk to my folks here, they're going to care because they know I'm a voter. I was talking to one legislator once, and he was saying how powerful the voice is of the community. And he was telling a story, not education related, but he said that when he was elected office, he started getting emails from this one small part of a community from senior citizens. And it was all in regard to not having a mailbox. So there used to be a mailbox within walking distance of this 55 and older community. And they could walk and drop off their mail. For some reason, the mailbox was removed. And these folks were very upset about it because they could leave their letters at the front desk of the 55 older community, but they were hearing it wasn't getting picked up on a regular basis. So they would mail something, a bill, a letter, birthday card, and it would take a little bit longer to get there than they should have. He received enough letters from his constituents that he worked with the post office to replace that mailbox. That's just a mailbox. But he heard enough, and I'm not talking hundreds of people, I'm talking like 15 people, was enough to make a difference for him. So your voice is going to matter, however you feel like getting that to your legislators. Teaching is political, and it's not a dirty word. It is okay for you to speak up because we know this field is under attack. There are organizations across the country that are leading legislation at the state level that is systematically dismantling education. I'm in the process of talking with some students about the whole concept of racially motivated decisions being made at the state level. And I'm sharing with them that, you know, we've had bills proposed in Pennsylvania that have said that they don't want teachers teaching anything that parents could consider divisive. Very vague information. The bill's gone nowhere. It was never voted on. It's not a concern in Pennsylvania right now. However, it continues to come up across the country. So we have to use our voices politically so that we can say, you know, we're not teaching children to dismantle politics. We're teaching children to be a good friend. We're teaching children to be helpful and thoughtful, to be caring to each other. This is what we're teaching. And unfortunately, this has come so broken down that we are seeing folks now attack social and emotional learning. Can't do my job if I'm not teaching children how to engage with themselves and with others. So it's important to be present. And I love this quote: teaching is a political act. Political means relating to the affairs of a country. Education is one of the affairs of our nation. And we know, based on how our world is set up and how politics is set up, that education falls in as a state experience. Early care and education at this point is very localized on what kind of funding you may or may not get. So voting for people who think it's important is important to you. And just sharing a little bit about First Amendment, you know, we have lots of opportunities, you know, to speak out. And can I speak out as a private citizen? Absolutely. The minute I go out wearing something that my school owns, it looks like I'm speaking for them. So I need to be thoughtful about that. What am I wearing? How am I speaking? Am I saying I'm from this school or this district? If I am, then I do run the risk of being criticized, possibly removed from my position because I don't have a right to speak on behalf of them. But I do have the right to speak on behalf of myself as a private citizen. It's also important for you to know what your social media footprint does. A school can discipline you for what you say on social media. This does not mean that you don't have the right to be an individual. You're a whole person. Whole people have the right to be whole people. However, you may come into a point, you know, the internet's forever. So there may come to a point where somebody questions what you've posted. It's important to know what the rights are and what the law says. So if you're ever questioning, am I saying something or posting something I shouldn't, have a conversation with your leadership, and then you can come to a place where you can be more comfortable. I had a student one year, and she was a double major in education and women and gender studies. And she was very politically minded. She was a rallier. She went to marches. She wrote her politicians. She made lots of phone calls. She was the person who was going to be the noisiest in every space when it comes to the rights of teachers. She made this a very important part of who she was during her interview process because she knew she wanted to be in a situation where her principal would support her decision-making when she spoke about what was right for teachers. So she got hired by someone who was willing to support her, and that's what she needed. There's great tools out there for you coming right from our national organization. NAEYC has a code of ethical conduct and statement of commitment. There are 4 main responsibilities. Our responsibilities to children, families, communities, and our colleagues. It helps us break down some of the sticky moments that we have on making ethical decisions. This document is powerful. It's not very long. It's a little repetitive, but that's important. It's supposed to be. It's currently under review by NAEYC because we want to make sure it's saying the right thing at this particular point, because I believe the last time it was updated was 2010. Oh, I might be a little off on that date, but that's too long. We have to review our position statements, and that's what NAEYC is doing right now. So there'll be lots of noise coming out of NAEYC in the next year or so, asking for public comment. So you should definitely get engaged with that as well. And when I say get organized, what do I mean? I basically mean hold meetings, write letters, contact your representatives. There is a link in the slideshow, which I'll share with you in a moment, that helps you find your members of US Congress. But remember, we can ask and help about doing all things federally, but we also need to know who our local politicians are, because often with education, that's where the needle will move the most. So as we close up today, and I do appreciate you sticking with me for this hour, I enjoy talking about this, but it's not just to know enough to know why and what, it's also important to put an action plan. So I've included a link in today's presentation for you to create a self-care plan. So this is going to be really helpful for teachers. There's this link here. Let's get it up and going. Where it'll help you to understand a little bit more about your own self around physical, psychological, emotional, spiritual, and relationship. What is your health in these areas? What's great is this link has these little places you can click. So let's say I want to think about my physical self-care. How am I doing? So if you click on that, it brings up a little quiz for you to take. And it gives you an idea of whether or not you are actually moving along in this way as best as you can. It gives you ideas on how to support yourself, ideas for how are you going to make this a focus. This document, I have it up here for you. It's linked in that website as well. You can just jot it down on a piece of paper, but taking some time to sit with yourself and say, what am I going to do to take care of my physical self? What am I going to do to take care of my emotional health? How am I going to take care of my relationships? Because it's such an important part of who we are as humans. What about my psychological health, my spiritual health, if that's something that you follow, or my workplace or academic health? And right there, you'll be able to see where you need the most work and where you feel like you're being most successful. This particular plan allows you to think a little bit about your overall balance, and then what might get in the way. And this feels a little negative, but it's not. When you're thinking about creating a new plan, trying something new, you got to look for those roadblocks. You've got to figure out, what's going to be getting in my way? I do this often with students, and sometimes students say, something that's going to get in my way is I have a really hard time at home, still live with my parents, and it's not always the best place for me to get work done because when I'm home, they want me to hang out or they want me to help babysit. So living at home might get in the way. Well, the person's not going to be able to change their situation. Housing's expensive. They need to stay at home. But maybe they might decide in order to take care of their academic health, when they do schoolwork, they do it at the library or they go to a coffee shop because they know they can be away from all the distractions of family. So that's why we look for those roadblocks, not to highlight the negative, but rather to focus on what we're going to do to overcome them. We also want to focus on those negative strategies we want to avoid. Perhaps it might be something as big as drinking or smoking. It might also be, I tend to be a snacker when I get stressed out. So I think it's important to, know that could be a thing. And then forecasting. If I do this, how am I going to feel? Man, that's exciting. It's exciting to see the future. So I really appreciate all that you've done to stick with me today. I hope I've given you some resources that are going to help you feel comfortable and ready to take it all on. I have a couple of QR codes here that might be helpful. And if you have an iPhone, you just open your camera app and hold it up and it will bring you to one of two places. One, I have a folder. It's my Google Drive folder, which is filled with all the research I used to create this presentation, including things about self-care, template, and all of that. It's open for you to look, use what you like if you want to revisit some of the things or read more about the things that I've shared. The other QR code is just the slides that I presented, again, in a Google Doc, so that you can click on all those links and try all of those self-care opportunities or get that recipe for Play-Doh. So thank you so much for staying with me today.
Dr. Hines, what an amazing session. Thank you so, so much for being here. As always, it was incredible to hear from you. So thank you all for being here, and I'm going to stop the recording.
Thank you.